Hello, we're doing the Allied Powers. You'll find it all on your classroom stuff again, okay? And questions, answers. All right, here we go, Van. Here we go, Van. Here we go, Van. Here we go.
Way to sell Coach Seisman's class and miss the Nadia.
Yeah, really, sell out my homeroom.
Julia said she really I really don't want to do
It
it.
doesn't matter, you won.
The 8th grade boys have beards.
You won.
They're scary.
It has nothing to do with history.
Are you saying Coach Osborne's scary?
No, I think the 8th grade boys are scary.
The World War II was fought between two major groups of nations. They became known as the Axis and the Allied Powers. Okay? The major Allied powers was Britain, France, Russia, and the United States. Okay, that was the major ones. The Allies formed mostly as a defense against the attack of the Axis powers. The original members of the Allies included Great Britain, France, and Poland. Okay? When Germany invaded Poland, Great Britain and France declared war on Germany. Okay? Everybody got that? I have no idea why they're laughing. The Allies, again, the Allies is who we consider the good guys. Okay? We were part of the Allies. The Axis was who we thought was the bad guys. I'm sure they at the time thought that we were the bad guys, but, you know, what is so funny?
I have a question.
What's your question, sir?
So if we never, if the U.S. never got involved before World War II, and we just kept our
We would eventually have been attacked.
do you think Germany would have invaded the
Yes.
U.S.?
Yes.
Yes.
Would
Yeah.
We would have pooped on our head.
no,
Yes.
it wouldn't.
I mean, they'd already attacked Pearl Harbor, and
Kinda
yeah,
sad
they
that-
were.
Wasn't there the
You
concentration
had German
camps?
subs off the coast supposedly, no, anyway.
Yeah, but it's kind of sad that like a size like a state. It's like Germany is like super small that they could like.
Yeah, but they had taken over by this point in time. Before they would have invaded us, they would already have taken over the world, pretty basically. So.
That's Europe, China.
Yeah. And size doesn't always matter when it comes to a fight. Okay, sometimes it's the,
It's like Japan
yeah,
defeating China.
exactly. At the start of World War II, Russia and Germany was friends. Okay, remember that. Russia and Germany were actually friends. Remember, they made a pact, they wouldn't attack each other. Okay?
Wasn't Germany?
However, in June of 1941, Hitler, the leader of Germany, orders a surprise attack on Russia, and then becomes the enemy of the Axis powers, okay, joining the Allies. So once they are attacked by Germany, Russia joins the Allies also, okay, because they have been betrayed by the Axis powers. It became real clear to them that Hitler wants to rule the world, and he's not going to make agreements with anyone and stay true to it.
He's so angry.
Okay? All right. Well, Hitler was kind of like the devil. He was a liar and a deceiver. He said what he needed to say to get what he wanted, and then he would stab you in the back in a
He was
heartbeat
ill to the
to
mind.
maintain
No,
control.
and literally stabbed
Okay?
you, not like figuratively.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
The United States had hoped to remain neutral during World War II. However, the U.S. was attacked by surprise at Pearl Harbor by the Japanese. Okay? This attack united the countries against the Axis powers and turned the tide of World War II in favor of the Allies. Think about it. These countries, it's kind of like World War I. Same thing happened in World War II. The United States stayed out of it. This war has been going on now for about 3 years, a little bit better.
Oh, dang.
You got people that are worn out. They're tired. They're running out of supplies. And here comes the United States, fresh troops. More modern equipment is coming in. So, yeah, that's going to help turn the tide in favor of the Allies.
And also Canada joined like the day after Pearl Harbor.
That's it. And
So that
so
helped
you're
too.
starting to get fresh
You
troops
kind of
in
feel
now.
that You mess with
Okay.
America.
We talked about before, it's kind of like a basketball team. You know, if you got 5 guys and the other team's got 10 and they can make subs, by the fourth quarter, they're going to probably be able to beat you because your legs are going to be gone. If you've been running, 5 guys been running up and down that court, dragging somebody up and down that court, the entire game, their legs are gone by the end of the fourth quarter. Okay, and you can, if the other team can put in fresh people, that's an advantage. Okay, same thing here, same thing. Okay, the United States had hoped to remain neutral during World War II. However, the U.S. was attacked, okay, by Pearl Harbor, and this attacked the United Countries, blah, 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 we have said that already. The leaders, Great Britain, okay, Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister of Great Britain during most of World War II. A guy named Chamberlain is actually the Prime Minister when it starts, but Churchill takes over shortly after. He was considered a great leader. His country was the last country fighting against Germany in Europe. They had overthrown the rest of Europe. Great Britain was the only one left. He is known for his famous speeches to his people when the Germans was bombing them during the Battle of Britain. Yes.
So it was mostly Winston Churchill who was the leader?
Of Great Britain.
So, okay.
Yep. The United States, of course, FDR was the president. He was he goes down in history as one of the greatest presidents of the United States. He led the country out of the Great Depression and through World War II. Yes, Caleb.
Never mind.
Okay. Stalin, Joseph Stalin, his title was General Secretary of the Communist Party. He was dictator of Russia, is what he was.
Wait, who was it?
Stalin.
Joseph Stalin.
He led Russia through terrible and devastating battles with Germany. Millions and millions of people died. After winning the war, he set up the Eastern Bloc of Soviet-led communist states. Stalin was probably every bit as bad as Hitler in all reality. He just wasn't trying to overthrow the world, but he was a horrible, horrible man.
Terrible to the Russians.
If the Russian people disagreed with him, they had a tendency to just disappear. He killed no telling how many of his own countrymen in order to maintain control.
Well, that's something
Charles de Gaulle was the leader of the Free French. He led the French resistance movement against Germany. That was de Gaulle. Okay?
Wait, where was he from?
France.
French.
Then you had Montgomery, who was the general of the British Army. He also led the ground troops in the battle, the invasion of Normandy.
Wait, what was it?
Okay? His name was Montgomery. Bernard Montgomery.
He was not American.
He was not American. He was the British Army.
D-Day is
Then
not
you
at
had Chamberlain. Chamberlain was the prime minister prior to Winston Churchill at the very beginning of the war. But he was one of those, he was trying to appease Hitler. He would meet with Hitler and promise him all kinds of stuff. Just don't attack us. And of course, that blew up in his face. He resigns and Churchill becomes the prime minister. Yes.
Wasn't Winston Churchill known for like the Navy and stuff? Didn't he serve for the Navy or something like that?
Not during World War II. World War II, he was prime minister. Yes. Yes, you like that?
Wasn't
Prime minister.
Bernard Montgomery at D-Day, and so was Dwight D. Eisenhower?
Yes.
Those are not near. That was not at Japan though. That was at Germany, right?
That was German. That's the European theater. We'll get to the guy that did this right now in a second.
Yeah.
Okay. Others in the United States, you had Harry S. Truman becomes president. Okay. Truman becomes the president after Roosevelt died. He was Roosevelt's vice president. Remember, Roosevelt served 3 terms. He was elected to a 4th term, but he died before he took office, so Truman gets to serve Roosevelt's term of president. Okay?
After that, didn't they make the rule you can only serve 2 terms?
Yeah, they did. Yes.
How did he die?
He had a stroke. He had a stroke and passed away. Yep.
Too much stress.
I'm sure he was. I'm sure he was under a lot of stress.
So you're going to drop the
Truman is the one that makes the call to drop the atomic bomb. Okay. George Marshall, okay, he was a general of the U.S. Army during World War II, and he actually earned a Nobel Peace Prize because he later becomes the Secretary of State after the war. He comes up with the Marshall Plan, to help Europe after the war. And it was a very humanitarian effort there. And we'll actually talk about that at the end of the war and whatnot. Dwight Eisenhower, whose nickname was Ike, he led the United States Army in Europe. He planned and led the invasion of Normandy. Okay? He later on becomes President of the United States after the Korean War and all, because he also fights, he's a general during the Korean War. And he becomes president after that. Douglas MacArthur. Douglas MacArthur was quite a character. He was the general of the Army in charge of the Pacific movement. Okay, you got the war in Europe and you got the war in the Pacific. He was in charge of the Pacific. Okay, that was MacArthur. Okay, and George Patton was an important general in North Africa and Europe, and he's actually killed in a Jeep crash. Boy, it takes him out after surviving all the wars and all that stuff that he, in battles and all, he's killed in a Jeep wreck.
Yeah, my papa was in North
Yes.
Africa.
Either my great uncle or my great great uncle. So one of my great uncles, they served for their general.
You can't pick this with your mouth.
My dad told me this story. They were like,
No, they're still holding on to
I called on one person.
I think it was my great uncle. They were in one of my great uncles was in a barn, and he was like checking everything out. And here's the door open, and it was German. So they have to hide in this closet, which is like this big, for like 10 hours.
Okay.
I'm going to
All right. Let me finish up here. Okay. Poland. The other countries that were part of the Allies, obviously Poland. Okay. It was the invasion of Poland by Germany in 1939 that starts World War II. China was invaded by Japan in 1937. They become a member of the Allies after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Even China joined in the Allies. Other countries that were part of the Allied nation included Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Netherlands, Yugoslavia, Belgium, and Greece. Okay? Now there was others that sided with the Allies, but they had already been overthrown and couldn't do anything to help. Okay? Great Britain, Russia, the United States were sometimes called the Big Three. When China was included, they were called the Four Policemen. Okay, it was them, those four nations are the ones who comes up with the United Nations. They start the United Nations. General Patton's nickname was Old Blood and Guts.
That's nice.
There was 26 countries who signed the original declaration by the United Nations in January the 1st, 1942. After the war ends, 51 countries signed on. And Winston Churchill once said,
Oh, this is that good speech.
a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth can put its pants on.
A lie gets halfway across the world, but
The
truth.
truth. And think about it. We've had newspaper articles or major newspapers that have been caught lying about some of the political things going on in our world. And the headline, the lie is a big headline. But when they get called on it and the truth comes out, the retraction is just a very small paragraph buried back in the paper somewhere. So the lie is up here. but the truth was down here. See what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay?
You should always have
Bye-bye.